Hi everyone, I'm Pham. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Opsin. We safeguard enterprises from data exposure risk using Microsoft Copilot. We just have a very happy news to say that the San Luis Cyber Investment Group had decided to invest in Opsin. And I'm super excited to have Ryan Frillman here from the group to talk a little bit more about you know, what their investment are and why did they invest in Opsin. So maybe before we get into that, Ryan, could you talk a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Frillman. Of course, as you said in the intro, I currently work for a finance company. It's called Equifax. Previous CISO at multiple companies. In my past, I was also working for MITRE with some of the Department of Defense. But either way, I've had lots of cybersecurity experience, and also too is helping companies at the leading edge solve some of our cybersecurity complex problems. As we continue to mature and as new technologies come out, it's important both for my career, but also to the companies I work for to ensure that we're on a leading edge to protect, against threats that happen in our environments.
Yeah. What specifically made me excited about the San Luis Cyber Investment Group is that you guys are a lot of practitioners yourself. Like
Yeah.
you're the CISO yourself. You see a lot of different things. Um, so maybe let me ask this question, right? Like, what convinced the San Luis Cyber Investment Group to invest in Opsin?
Yeah, and let me talk a little bit more about STL SIG and then LEAD. It's kind of our two organizations that are comprised of over or close to 50 practitioners throughout the industry. They
Mm,
have multiple years of experience, 20 plus in cybersecurity technology. And really, what we do as a group is we find the top talent in those organizations to
mm,
help us as far as, like I said before, focus on cyber threats. How do we resolve slash remediate, protect, etc.
mm,
And in some cases of helping those organizations understand our problems. And so
mm,
what really excited us with Opsin is that the leading edge with AI, not to say that AI hasn't been around for a long time, but continuous focus from business and technology and how everyday users within technology and business can use it to solve complex problems. And we've seen a lot of those with Opsin is, well, how do we get ahead of that? What's the upcoming threats that are coming through that we just haven't thought of with the high acceleration of adoption of AI?
mm,
At the same time as well is, again, listening to some of our practitioners of issues that we have with cyber threats.
mm.
Are we prepared? Can we
Right.
find these tools? If you think about like from, let's go down the path with, next gen AV, we started with AV and then we went to next gen AV. It's a continuing evolution of what's next. Cyber actors or to be threat actors are always looking for opportunities
Mm,
to kind of gain access. So that's what really excited us about Opsin is that, again, forward thinking, trying to get ahead of it. Also, what was really cool, with you, James, and some of your other partners there is really understand of, hey, what are the challenges that are occurring? How about we help build a solution that kind of actually fixes the challenge? Kind of the industry is doing this little reverse that we've seen as well is that, a lot of the vendors come to us says, hey, this will solve your problems. They're like, know what our problems are. Like, how do you know that that's my problem? So we really appreciate that with the partnership with Opsin is like really asking us, what is your problem? Let's build a solution that can help solve your problem. And specifically, if it's your problem, more than likely it's others in the industry as well that we can build this product for.
Yeah, that what I appreciate the most about the group, right? Like it's not just about the investment that you guys make; it's about the strategic advice that you have. As a group of 50 practitioners who've seen, who we continue to see a lot of things that are evolving around Gen AI, right? And I think the other thing that I really like is that we've been talking and getting your help from more than a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Like in different directions, right? Like I think that exactly to your point, right? Like we was like figuring out like what's the problem we need to solve, and it was like different way that we solve, and then we kind of like this. And then eventually we come back to you. It was like, oh yes.
And that's what's super interesting too is the open feedback. But the problem that was maybe a year ago is changed. It continues to change utilizing the AI because of how fast it's generating activity with the business and use cases. And at the
Yeah.
same time too is revenue opportunities that business are utilizing it for. I was working on some projects this week, and it was like, hey, how do we take some documents and create a presentation? Normally I would take, an individual, several weeks to do back and forth. And AI,
Yeah.
it's like minutes, if not seconds to do that. And again,
Yeah.
to say that your solution is helping with that, it's more of like an AI conversation on how fast we're moving and how
Yeah.
to utilize the technology that's in place.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and when it comes to GenAI security specifically, one of the things that we keep hearing from practitioners is around the data exposure risk when it comes to GenAI solution, especially some of the more widely adopted tool like Microsoft Copilot that is just like out of the box, where you turn it on and you get access to all the underlying enterprise. Um, so when you guys invested in Opsin as a group, like how do you validate the the problem itself, right? I imagine that there's so many companies out there that want you guys help, and it's like we chose Opsin. And how do you validate that Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, and all of this data exposure is actually a problem?
Yeah, it's more of interviewing and some of our peers in the industry and asking them is how are you utilizing Copilot? I think that's the biggest thing, and in some cases, what's some people think is a little bit scary, but also too is edge is, oh man, I can write an entire application in Copilot in minutes and seconds, and be like, well, where did you get the code? Well, I got it through Copilot. Copilot wrote, but great. But do you know or understand in those modules that are built in a Copilot, what's in them? Are they having a backdoor? Are they utilizing a common port or a non-standard port? Kind of those conversations that's within there. Or are they including some open source libraries that you are aware of the risk of those open source libraries? And again, it's any kind of combination of utilizing Copilot. Again, Copilot kind of extends also to is like document management and AI stuff that
Yeah.
we discussed as well. But it's like, all right, hey, are your secrets embedded in the product? Are your secrets or conserve sensitive data built into these products? And then also too, how is it exposed? So it's really vetting on how you protecting that data from an internal and external, and then also at the same time too from a proprietary perspective, as mentioned about keys and access of hey bad coding practices like again going back to that use case scenario of how it's built and or consider how an application get built.
Yeah.
At the same time too from an LLM, we talked about AI prompting conversation as well. I'm like I think it was in the last month or so. Now you're starting to see is tools and techniques to
Yeah.
challenge an AI with prompting to get the information out, like confusing AI to relinquish some of that sensitive data. So it's really kind of going around those use cases where we
Yeah.
consistently, see those problems exist. And as I stated before, is hey, where's the solutions? Where's the kind of like I say technologies that we need to have in place that kind of protects that. So again, that validation is really working with you and your group of going through those use cases, and then you all should say showcasing of all right, here's the number of business cases. Here we can show our product that those use cases are not occurring. I mean, we have the level of protections in place to block,
Mm.
prevent, whatever kind of terminology you want to utilize. It's basically mitigating that risk.
Yeah, exactly. I think you highlighted, some of the biggest risks in the enterprises there when it comes to using Gen AI tools such as Microsoft Copilot, right? I think, like what you said, right? They have, this GitHub Copilot, and they have this Microsoft 365 Copilot, which utilize a lot of internal documents.
Yeah.
And in the past, like if a sensitive file is overshared in terms of permission, it would take them like weeks and months to be able to locate like the right SharePoint, the right folder, the right file to be able to see that sensitive information. But with tool like Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's so easy for people to just like ask a question like what's the social security number, for example, or
Right.
like or like what is the salary of employees, and it was just in seconds and it just show up. Like in the past, so one of my customers said that like in the past it's like you have a flashlight and then you just like pointing in the room and you see, oh, this is sensitive. But now with Gen AI, it's like you turn on a switch and the entire room light up and you see, oh my gosh, all of these documents are sensitive, like customer data, social security numbers, and all of that.
Yeah, and the other aspect too is sometimes when you talk about identities, all all right, certain developers, certain tech admins have quote unquote God admin rights. They have these
Yeah.
accelerated, elevated admin rights, and again, they know in certain circumstances not to utilize those rights or utilize those for bad. But if they have an app and they're like, for example, Gemini, and they just do a query, it utilizes their permissions to return the results.
Yeah.
They're probably supposed to have that because that's how they manage the back end of that server. But again, now they're utilizing for different purposes and don't realize, or
Yeah.
the system doesn't realize the return results because they're like, well, you have the permissions to your point about open up the room with the light. Here's the results from your query. We're like, oh no, I will get all that data that you
Yeah.
returned to me. Maybe I was doing something on a use case that had nothing to do with this other server that I didn't realize I still had access to,
Yeah.
or yeah, I knew I had access to it, but it was for a different purpose. So there is those kind of concerns of how do we really lock that down,
Mm.
and publish. At the same time too, some of those some people don't realize when they publish it, it's kind of forget, or not necessarily forget, they publish it, but they're like they don't understand or how many rows. They're like, well, it's a million rows. Well, are you going to go through every single one of it? Oh, it's too late. It's seconds. It's already publicly available or available in some context to be utilized or consumed.
Yeah, definitely. Um, an important aspect of any investment decision is around two factors, right? One is the team, the
Yep.
other is the market opportunities. And that is true for all the investors out there, right? Like they have to have certain confidence about the team that are able to execute this. And then if the team execute it, the market need to be there. So
Right.
that like even if you do well, if the market is not there, is gonna be that, right? Like so, like if the market is there but the team is not there, it's also that. So uh, talk a little bit more on like how did you kind of evaluate the team,
Yep.
and then later on about the market.
Yeah. So my biggest thing is that I think I told you on the day one is make me fall in love with you as a product, meaning the product you're selling, but also as the team.
Yeah.
Because I think the team can, if the team is able to listen to feedback and morph in directions and continue to pivot throughout their kind of career and kind of or contribute their product roadmap, they kind of get to that North Star. That's
Mm.
what changes the game.
Yeah.
There are certain startups and certain companies are like, I know what the problem is. Get it, you're in the industry. I get it, you're a practitioner, but I know what the problem is, and here's what it is, and don't listen to that feedback or hey, I got all the facts. I don't need you. I just need you to buy it. You kind of lose a little bit of that shine,
Yeah.
where all right, you may be to your point about it shifting. Your business or contribute to the problem may shift, and now you're stuck because you're willing to pivot. Look, with you and your rest of your team, you all were, like I stated before, the feedback was tremendous as far as in response to that. At the same time, too, is your team is growing. And it seems like with this podcast and a lot of the marketing that you are doing as an individual, it's like every time I look around on LinkedIn, you're there, or one of your partners are there. You guys are doing events. You're kind of reaching out and building relationships. That goes back to the make me fall in love with you and your team. Because I believe that if you have that gumption, if you have that motive to move as fast as you can, and also too is kind of looking at from a benefit analysis of like, hey, this is where we can kind of solve some problems. Let's do some proof of concepts. Be hungry for what's next. At the same time, too, is ask a ton of questions.
Mm.
Some of this is new to, hey, does this apply to finance? Does this apply to, energy or emerging markets? You may not know what it is, so you ask all those questions and consume them and turn around like, okay, I know how we can have our solution apply to you or to the industry. And that's what we love here within STL SIG and Lead, is that kind of motivation and hungry, and how do we change, and how do we help. I would say from a helping hand too. I mean, you and your team are always like, hey, how can we help not just you but help the security community
Yeah.
with some of the challenges that you are all facing, and that's what we love here.
Definitely, we appreciate the partnership so far in helping us. So, um, and then the second factor in an investment is about market opportunity.
Mhm.
Could you talk a little bit more, like what's the factors, or like what is your thoughts or consideration when it comes to market opportunity for a company like Opsin?
Yeah, the biggest one is a TAM, the total addressable market. Like, what does that look like? What is the 5 year, or the 3 year, or even the 1 year? I think I even asked you on day one, you do want to be an acquirer or acquiree? uh, because you could be a feature or you could not be a feature. It's what you all want to do. But
Yeah,
looking back to the TAM aspect of like, how big is this thing? Just this week, you look at Nvidia is the first company to hit, like, the 4 trillion mark, is like the most expensive company in the world, which is crazy for AI. So you think about that hunger, and you're like, always think about, is like, all right, what's next? Amazon is developing their own chips. They're utilizing a lot of the Nvidia chips now. Is that going to be a convergence, because they're seeing the TAM as well? It's like, if
mm,
Nvidia is able to hit that, then why can't we hit that as all their competitors, whether it's Intel, AMD, etc. AMD is starting to release some of their AI chips as well. But to put that in context, that all puts as a part of the TAM. And like, if AI is growing in general, and that's just from a hardware level perspective, you're starting to see the tentacles, like
mm,
energy is going up. It's like, hey, are we going to have enough energy to support this? So that means a lot of businesses and the industry is starting to utilize a lot of the AI. So this makes more sense from a TAM perspective. Is like, exponentially more of the AI is being utilized. This, from an Opsin perspective, there is more of that bigger or larger TAM that is, I would say, obtainable. And
yeah,
most of this conversation is within the US. It's not to say that other regions are not looking at this as well. I shouldn't
yeah,
just say US, but in generality is, again, we look at the TAM as like, what's the biggest market out of there.
mm,
And at the same time as well is, what other things are outside of AI? Like, what are they supporting? And when you start to look at the street and start listening to the market, as far as
yeah,
Wall Street, of that's all they're talking about. It's just a more appealing factor of like, we need to kind of spread around and look at these companies as startups and help them, but at the same time too is look at their total addressable market.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really good overview of how you view this as a practitioners and as well as an investors, right? Um, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for being here with me, and thanks so much for your trust in Opsin, and thank you so much for the partnership so far. And I continue to look forward and working with you and the team, kind of like realizing the option visions and helping protect the Gen AI and push more for more adoption in Gen AI.
Yeah, we're excited here. We're really looking forward. What next for Opsin? And as always, I tell this, online with you as this conversation, but offline, I think it's the same message. We really wish the best for Opsin, and we really see a bright future for the company.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast with me, Ryan.
Uh,
Appreciate that.